Christian is going to take you a little further down the rabbit hole and give you some more breakdown and some more facts and figures on the kinds of attacks. So Christian, if you want to come on up, and I shall attempt to get your presentation up for you. It's slightly alarming the way the laptop screen goes completely blank on us here. So
maybe it's being hacked.
It could well be. Yeah. It could well be. That one's you, isn't it?
That would be fun if somebody was live hacking us.
Yes,
right now.
It would be delightful, Christian, wouldn't it? Please go on now. Right. There we go.
Right.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks. Hi, good morning. So I just wanted to briefly do a little bit of like maybe taxonomy work, like bring up some, add a little bit of structure to the discussion. So talk about what kind of motivations are there, who is actually doing this, how are they doing it, like what methods and vectors are being used, and how easy is it really? I mean, David basically just demonstrated that. And I also wanted to briefly touch on what probably should not be the topic of today. That being said, I'm not going to go into detail and explain in depth like how a, I don't know, SQL injection actually works, because that would be we would need to sit down for a couple of hours for that and need a different setting. And I'm not actually qualified to go into detail as well. So the why. Why are people doing this? There's a number of motivations to hack or crack a system, and usually it's a combination of motivations. So one obvious thing is content or data theft. The second one is extortation. That has become really popular in the last couple of months with all the crypto ransomware attacks that have been in the press. A third one is identity fraud, which usually goes hand in hand with data theft. So it's usually the first data theft happens first, and then you're able to assemble the identity. Resource theft. CNC means command and control, where you basically take over a computer. That's like the botnet attack that David has mentioned. And it's usually also a precursor to other types of attacks. So first you take control, and then you think about what else can I do to have some fun. There's political causes. Like Anonymous is probably the most prominent example, but there's also like the Syrian Electronic Army, I think they're called. Yeah. There's a variety of groups out there doing things for political reasons. Some of them are maybe just hiding behind political reasons. It's always good to have like a good, I don't know, Save the Whales botnet attack, while in the background you're stealing identities, who knows. Just because is certainly a motivation. That's because I can do it. I mean, there's a lot of highly motivated students, pupils, individuals out there. Everybody has access to a lot of resources these days, and information is easy to find. So just to prove a point. And there've been a lot of examples for this in the last 15, 20 years. And then the even more darker things like spying on organizations, governments, companies, which is quite popular, and simply for the joy of causing destruction. Some people just like that. They just enjoy damaging, destructing things, and it usually amounts to economical damage. But it's actually also possible to cause physical damage through a cyber attack. The most prominent example is the Stuxnet attack that allegedly the US and...
It's all right, it's Iran, they're not going to sue us, what you could say.
Yeah, but I have to go to Boston on Sunday, and I don't want to spend the day in a dark room, I know. And so where they actually used a cyber attack to speed up the turbines in the Iranian nuclear facilities, and by speeding them up beyond their usual operational parameters, they were actually damaging the equipment. And with all this Internet of Things stuff that's going on, like your fridge, your microwave, your, I don't know, vacuum cleaning robot, they're all connected to the Internet, so there's lots of stuff you can potentially do to have fun. Yeah, so these are like the main reasons, the main motivations for attacks. Now, who's doing this? And this is actually a graphic I stole from IBM. They have some really nice white papers out, and the sources are all in the presentation, so you can look it up for yourself. So they publish like an annual Cybersecurity Intelligence Index, which is a very useful resource, and it's free. You just have to give them your email address, but you can use a fake one. So they and this was quite shocking to me. This is 2015 data, and a lot of people I'm talking to think, oh yeah, I mean, there's evil people from the outside trying to hack our system, right? But like a lot of times, it's actually not so much the outsiders. There's two types of, let's call it insider threats. One is the malicious insider, like the disgruntled employee, or I don't know, somebody who just harbors a grudge and decides to either steal data, corrupt data, open a backdoor, whatever. And the purple guy, the 23.5%, is inadvertent actors. These are people who are maybe the victim of a phishing campaign, maybe professors handing out their credentials to sites in different parts of the world, and they inadvertently open the door for outsiders. But it's not like the outsiders have to do like real tough hacking work to crack a firewall or whatever security system is in place. They actually manipulate a person on the inside to get in. And that shows that it's not enough to buy or to spend like $1 gazillion on firewalls, intrusion prevention and detection systems, and whatever all those like security companies offer. You actually also have to think about policies and how to police those policies. And this can start with like, are you actually allowed to insert your USB stick into your computer at work? I mean, that's where it usually starts. So some of the agents behind this, and this kind of aligns with the motivations I showed earlier. So there's so-called hacktivist groups. They just like, there's people, they just like to hack. It's people who have like political reasons to hack, commercial reasons to hack. Then there's like motivated individuals, and this can be everything like from a single criminal to just a prankster or someone who just wants to try it out. Then right in the middle, and probably the most prominent one, is organized crime. And it's no secret that this has been going on for at least 10 to 15 years, especially in countries where the jurisdiction is not so tough on these things, and actually lets these groups operate as long as they don't target their own countrymen, but maybe other countries they don't like in the first place. Corporations are agents as well. Employees of corporations, that's for example the disgruntled employee case. And then there's the other usual suspects, government or government-sponsored groups and terrorist groups. And I mean, that's always a question of like definition. some people are terrorists, some are freedom fighters, and sometimes the labels switch rather rapidly. But that's the scene that's out there. It's really like from a guy sitting in a college dorm in, I don't know, London, Stanford, or Moscow, to a very nefarious mafia-style organization with a real amount of resources at their disposal, and not just cyber resources, but people who can actually enforce certain things on the street as well. How does it work? There's quite a toolbox out there. In the early days, it was a very few ways of getting into a system. There were like a number of prominent cases in the 90s, but that was all like very much beginners stuff. In the last 10 to 15 years, this has the whole scene has developed a level of sophistication that is, I mean, you have to admire it in a way. I mean, just like other like types of businesses are now available as software as a service, you can just order hacking or malware as a service these days. And it's literally, you just go to the internet, you pay like, I don't know, $550, $500 for a certain kit type of exploit, whatever, and it's there. You don't even need to be able to program anymore. You just click and do it. So, and now I'm going to throw a little bit of terminology at you. Again, I mean, it's not important to understand these things in detail. What I just wanted to make sure is that you have at least heard these things. So the first, can you read this? The first thing, and probably one of the most common ones, are so-called exploit kits. These are readily available software packages that you can download and then use to probe a system, get into a system, and take it over, exploit it. And it's very easy. I mean, that's child's play these days, unfortunately. The so-called drive-by exploits, where you basically scan a number of, for example, an organization like the IET, you figure out, oh, that might be interesting and there might be something there, and you just go for it with whatever technology is convenient at the time. But it's not like planned in advance. There's the infamous botnets, which is like just a huge bunch of computers which have been taken over sometimes years, sometimes decades in advance. You can rent these botnets, just like you go to Amazon or Microsoft to rent virtual machine power. You can rent botnet power. You can just sign up and say, I need like 3,000 machines for 6 hours to run a denial of service attack against, I don't know, Elsevier, because I don't like them, and you hammer them for 6 hours, you pay for it, and that's it. You don't even need to take over the machines yourself. There's malvertising that has become popular in the last 1.5 years, where people actually hijack ad servers and they insert bad advertising in terms of damaging advertising, not in terms of stupid advertising. There's enough of that already. And that's especially annoying because you as a website hoster, you can't really do anything about it because the advertisement is coming from Google or from some Adobe or from some other company. There's physical theft, damage, or alteration, where you actually, usually that's combined with someone on the inside, but you actually get to the systems, you physically change parameters or damage hardware. And now the order was completely out of sync, but doesn't matter. There's lots of other stuff. Then there's rogue certificates. This is faked, usually SSL certificates, which basically make the user believe that it's a safe site. You get like the green encryption icon in your browser address bar. You think, oh yeah, it's encrypted, it's safe, I can enter my credit card data or bank account or whatever. But at the end of the day, like the certificate that guarantees that it's safe has been faked, and from there on it's downhill. Then the good old password cracking, which used to go out of fashion for a while and is now back in fashion because of two factors. One is, for example, the LinkedIn data dump that is now freely available on the internet for everybody to use, and this actually makes cracking passwords a lot easier. Like before this data dump, you had to, I don't know, it took like weeks to crack a certain amount of passwords. Now it's down to a few days, sometimes a few hours, because you have so much more information that you basically have as a starting point, which makes it a lot easier for the algorithms because they can avoid certain rabbit holes which lead to nothing. And the second one is just, again, like more computer power and more sophisticated algorithms to do this more quickly. Social engineering is a non-technical method. It's like getting people through charm or, I don't know, personality scams to actually give up credentials and data, and maybe we'll hear a little bit more about this later on.
So Christian, just ask everybody in the room actually, so how many of you are aware that your organization does penetration testing? Show some hands.
1, 2.
Okay, not that many of you. Do any of you that put your hands up run social engineering penetration tests? One person. Do that.
Please do.
Okay, do that. Because otherwise you're sticking up some posters by the coffee machine, and you know how much attention your employment people would pay to posters by the coffee machine, right? But there's nothing like actually getting some people into your organization to then do something and say, so we managed to do this and we managed to do that, and all the things that they will be able to do at the end of the day. It is not cheap, but actually if you want to change attitudes and cultures, I highly recommend it. Sorry,
yeah, no, thanks. Phishing, I think it's well known. There's a variety of this called spear phishing, where it's like a targeted phishing attack. Code injection, that's where you, most commonly known as SQL or XSS injection, where you actually exploit, sometimes it's sloppiness on the part of the programmer, sometimes it's just bad luck, where there's holes in the source code that you can inject your own code and then take over. Search engine poisoning is also lots of fun. It's a way to manipulate search engine results to showing your own malware site instead of, like, for example, the proper IET site, and then get people to go there instead of to the IET. Worms and Trojans have been around for many, many years, and they're still going strong. Distributed denial of service attack, usually done via botnets, and they are usually done to either just cause damage, because your website will be down, you have to log out all your users. Also to demand ransom, that used to be quite popular in a couple of years ago, where like websites, consumer websites were being threatened, hammered with a denial of service attack, and then they got a message, hey, if you wire like this amount of money, this amount of bitcoins to this account, we'll stop these attacks. You can buy protection, which is the classic organized crime racket. And there's not much the authorities can do about it, because it happens, like, it comes from jurisdictions where, for example, the US or UK, they don't have any say. And then finally, the APT, which is short for Advanced Persistent Threat, where people actually get into a system and then they don't do anything in the beginning. And then they just gather data, they sit around, they watch, they observe, and maybe launch some of the other types of attacks, and they stay in the system for quite a long time. And that's probably the biggest threat because you won't know that it's happened. It's just like a parasite sitting there, and then like, I don't know, a year later, you find out that you're pretty screwed is probably the word I should be saying.
So that was Sony. The attackers were inside the Sony system for something like 6 to 8 months.
Yeah. So we've already touched on like how easy it really is. You don't need to be Chuck Norris. You can actually hire Chuck. There's things like hacking as a service. You can hire people on the internet to perform a hack, just like you can hire a UX designer or Java developer by the hour. You can hire malware as a service. You can hire botnets. You can either download for free, or if you can, like, there's a premium, like a freemium model of toolkits and exploit kits. And there's like tons of how-tos and so-called like the black book of blah, blah, blah. And they're all available for free. And they're good. I mean, they're very good in terms of tutorials. Sometimes I wish we had tutorials like this for the stuff we actually need in our organizations. This is from another cybersecurity report by FireEye, which is a firewall and other security systems vendor. And this I found really scary. So the median number of days attackers are present on a victim network before detection. That's like, I don't know, 229 days is long. Very long. And 63 of those companies didn't really find it out by themselves. They just learned it from some external entity. And 100% of those companies had up-to-date like antivirus software and signatures. So it's not enough to install like the antivirus software on your server and then think, I've done my part. To wrap it up, just a number of facts to illustrate what the situation is really like. These are all taken from the Semantic Internet Security Threat Report, which was released in April 2016. Again, that's a yearly report, which is hugely informative and also free of charge. I mean, this is scary stuff, the stuff that I highlighted in red. Zero-day exploits are security holes that have not been known previously, so there is no patch, no solution to this yet. It's like an open door. This one, the number of stolen personal records, 23% up in 2015, 429 million. And that's just what they know. I mean, there's probably more out there. And the second phrase that is highlighted is even more scary, that like 85% of the companies nowadays choose not to report this anymore. And there's some countries in the European Union where it's actually now mandated, or I don't think the legislation has already passed. I think they're about to pass it, but it's going to be mandatory that you actually publish these breaches. So I don't know whether that's already out there but it's coming up. And that's a good thing, I think. But it's scary stuff. 500 million records. Yeah, that's like a lot of websites have unpatched vulnerabilities, which is just shouldn't be the case, and you don't need to be a genius to at least ensure that you got this base covered. And this again, this is very relevant because it's not just like people targeting Elsevier, Springer, Wiley, like the big guys or like the big companies like, I don't know, Goldman Sachs, Siemens, General Motors. A steady increase in attacks targeting businesses with less than 250 employees. 43% of all attacks targeted at small businesses in 2015. That's like nearly half of the attacks are directed at small businesses these days. And that's very relevant because it shows that you can't really say, oh yeah, we're just like a small publisher and nobody's going to be interested. Why would we be a target? We're the nice guys. Like we even do open access journals. That's not how it's going to work. And I used to work for a publishing, like a small / medium-sized publishing house for 11 years and was responsible for IT. And we had like denial of service attacks regularly. And again, that was just the tip of the iceberg that we know of. Yeah. Ransomware, very fashionable, already mentioned that. And again, the second thing is that it's not limited to Windows, PCs. It is on Mac, on Linux, and on smartphones, especially on smartphones. And like this company's Semantic, they have already done a proof of concept against smartwatches and smart televisions. So, I mean, it's relatively easy. You encrypt, you hijack the fridge, and unless you pay up, you're not getting anything to eat anymore, right? So it's... I mean, it's serious. Like, at the moment, we're laughing, right? Because it's just like a couple of nerds who got this fridge connected to the internet. But 5 years down the road, all our home appliances will be connected probably if the Internet of Things industry has its way. Yeah, and that is just another thing where they actually it's not like a sophisticated cyber attack, it's just like cold calling people and telling, yeah, I'm from support, blah, 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 please call us direct, and then they trick people into giving up data or sell them whatever subscription to stupid services. And that's a big money maker apparently. I thought this was over. This is a bit like the Nigerian send me your money thing, but it still seems to be going strong. Okay, yeah. So lot of input. I just wanted to briefly touch on what is out of scope for today, which is these three things. And I think it's important to keep the discussion a little bit structured because privacy is very important and it is related to security, but it is a different topic and you would probably also need different experts for this. And then also the last two aspects are, none of us is a lawyer, I think, right? Good. So, I mean, if people want to...
Are there any lawyers in the room?
Good. Even better. And the third thing is legitimacy is also like whether you think it's cool to, I don't know, hack the Sony system and upload all these emails or naked pictures of whatever celebrity or not. That's kind of besides the point because it's illegal. I think a lot of things are cool maybe, but they're still illegal. So if I do them, I go to prison. And so we try to keep that out of the debate here as well. What can be done? Just briefly listing this stuff, not going into detail here because I'm running out of time. But two things I think are very, very important because especially small businesses cannot really afford to, like Sony, I think they had 16 layers of firewalls. And they were not the cheapest firewalls. And I think, I don't know Sony, but I think they have like probably this 500,000 pages compliance handbook, I would assume, being a huge corporation. But still they got hacked. And like a lot of finance companies are spending $200 million a year on security, they still got hacked. So I think the two very important points are awareness, advocacy, and education. Educating people, making them aware of what is out there and what are the easy steps everybody can take to avoid being a target or victim. And then the last one, collaboration. Sharing like best practices, maybe working together on standards or ad hoc standards. Because if we all start reinventing the wheel, it's not going to help anybody, maybe except for the 2 or 3 biggest companies in the room. That was that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.